Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, will it be a healthier Red Raider roster whenever they take the field coming up this weekend following an open week? We'll take a closer look, and also preparing for the Deutschendorf Cup. He was born in the summer of his 27th year. It's the battle for John Denver's soul. We prepare next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Glad to be back in the saddle with you on Locked On Texas Tech, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for joining us whenever, wherever, however you're finding the show on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. Do subscribe if you haven't yet and make it your first listen each weekday. All right, Chris, the bye week is behind us. You and I had some time away. Now, some people, I heard rumors, I was on a honeymoon, actually visited the Rocky Mountains. Why? To get in touch with that Rocky Mountain High, because it's the Deutschendorf Cup. It's the battle for John Denver's soul. Was the Locked On West Virginia guy even in the Rocky Mountains this week? I don't think they were going as far as we were to acclimate ourselves to this one. And really, Chris, regardless of the records somewhat in this series, you've had some pretty interesting games, hadn't you? Both in Morgantown and back here in Lubbock like we'll be this time around. It's been a pretty fun series since West Virginia's been in the Big 12.
Country roads, absolutely. You know, and I think these two athletic directors several years ago, I think it kind of fell off and they didn't really pursue it. But there was some discussion about having a trophy.
Let's go.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a guitar, or
bronze guitar.
Exactly. I don't know what it was going to be, but I think that nobody really pursued it. But there was some discussions there. The John Denver correlation. But you're right. These are two teams that have, you know, and I think it probably sticks in the craw of West Virginia a little bit, and probably Neil, Coach Brown, just because he hasn't been able to beat Texas Tech since he's been at West Virginia, and this will be a big one for him. They come in with a lot of confidence, and it's a game that you really need to win, you being Texas Tech. And I think that this is kind of a swing game, if you will. This kind of like puts you back in the thick of things, or it really takes you out. You know, yes. This is the difference between being 1-2 or, 1-3 in the league race versus 2-2 with all these home games coming up. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you've had some interesting games. I think in recent years, you've been successful against these guys, and they know that it's being pointed out to them, and they're going to come in on some confidence. Here's the fascinating thing: they start out 0-2. And then have won 3 of their last 4. You start out 2-0, and you've lost 3 of your last 4. Some of that has been based on who you've played and who they've played and all those kinds of things. But they come in feeling, I think, pretty good about themselves, and you feel kind of, I don't know, desperate is the right word, but you're ready to win a game. And I think yes. You're ready. You need to hold serve at home for sure, because you've got 4 of the last 6 at home, man, and back-to-back home games here coming up. So I'm ready to get back at it.
This is put up or shut up week to me, Chris, because you went through 5 straight against top 25 competition. You get a couple of those, one of those really meaningful, obviously, to your fan base. And I think we've had a lot of, and I'm not saying it has been inaccurate or wrong to do this, but we've had a lot of, good job, good try, pat on the backs. And there's some encouraging things. We know you're doing things not as well, or you wouldn't have lost some of the games that you did. But there have been some encouraging things, I think, for a fan base that, to me, reasonably just wants to get back to a bowl game, get back to that kind of standard. And college football only requires you to be a 500 football team to do it. So it's nothing lofty, but that's just where we're trying to get back to once again as Joey McGuire attempts to rebuild this program. And it's a ground-up rebuild. There's no question about it. So I think as you sit here now, Chris, we understood there was a little grace through that stretch, maybe from the fan base. I know not all of you, but some of you. There was some grace in saying, all right, well, I'm liking some of the bricks we're seeing here used to build a foundation, but can we actually put up a wall? And now you turn to West Virginia, who makes this game as interesting as they can, given the start to their season by virtue of what they've done more recently and what they did last time out on the field. But I still look at Texas Tech as a slight home favorite and sitting here thinking, all right, put up or shut up. Go beat a team that I think you should be better than, honestly. I don't know. That's why you'll play the game Saturday, but I think you should be a better football team than, and become the team that looks to me like a bowl team. But you've got to get wins to be that. So to me, this is a pivotal week, not just as far as win-loss record and some of the numbers you allude to, which very much are a part of this reality this week. But it's also, I think, from a state of the program, fan base kind of feel, pivotal moment, because now comes a time when you are a home favorite against a team like West Virginia. And I think justifiably so. I know certainly I, as a fan, am expecting some good things the second half of this season. I'm liking the way that the schedule shapes up with some of your home matchups and what you've got left there versus on the road, even though I know those will be very daunting. So put up or shut up. And of course, I don't mean it literally, but does that make sense to you? I feel like now you're in a position where somebody's going to look at you and say, you should be the team with the advantage actually this weekend.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying is they being Texas Tech have been credited for playing hard, and it just not being quite good enough at times. Again, we have maintained here in this space that if you continue to do that, I think you're going to like the results. You just have to eliminate some of the mistakes and things like that. And we've got all kinds of dynamics at play here with the quarterback stuff and all that we'll kind of get into later on. But I think if you play hard and play the way you have, because that's the thing, you hope that these games against ranked teams that you played back to back, that there's a payoff there. Okay. Yes. But you have to have the same effort like you did against those teams. And you have to start fast, and you have to play with that same intensity and all that stuff. That's really the key. And that's Coach McGuire and his staff's challenge, is to make sure that they look at this game and go, okay, even though this team isn't ranked, this is still a team that can beat you. I mean, you're a slight favorite, but you need to have that same level of intensity and the same level of, we got to play hard all game long for 60 minutes, because West Virginia is not bad, folks. I mean, they're good enough to absolutely beat you, and beat you badly if you show up and play poorly. They run it well. They've got a good defensive line. I know it sound like a broken record there, but that's and they've got an old veteran quarterback, so who's been through it at times, been at Georgia, and Graham Harrell, former Red Raider. I mean, he's doing a really good job with their offense. So this one is going to be really interesting this week. But you're right. They call these swing games because your season kind of goes one way or the other after these kinds of games, depending on if you win it or lose it. And you've got you're in a good spot here at home. You're rested. And I'm curious to see kind of what this team looks like, and if they continue, because you've talked about this. You're just begging for it. And I think most of us are. Can you continue to get better as the weeks go? Are you improving, or do you take a step back? Do you dip? And too much of we've seen this kind of this wave of inconsistency on, well, that was a good day, that was a bad day. I mean, you just want to see this slight improvement, and if you mix in playing really hard, I think you'll like the results. But we've got all week to talk about it.
And buddy, that stretches back to what Kevin Curtis chasing a North Texas Eagle or whatever.
Mean Green.
That goes back so far.
When the very next week you beat A&M.
Right. Trying to establish some level of consistency has been so difficult to do. But good teams get better as the season goes on. And what you hit on there, I believe in very much. We said it just about every week going into these tough matchups with top 25 opponents. Win or lose, you should be a better football team because of these experiences against tough opponents in tough settings. That opportunity is there for you. Are you going to take advantage of it? Saturday at 2:00 is when I think we really begin to find out what the first half of the season and now this open week in the rear view has done for you as a team. And dead ahead, we'll revisit the open week. We'll revisit practice. We'll revisit repetitions. Who's getting the opportunity to lead this team in whatever regard? And of course, I know what position you're all thinking. Deep snapper. Is that conversation over? We'll dive into that coming up ahead. Maybe a quarterback mention as well. But first, I got to tell you about our friends at Simply Safe, because the numbers are not lying to you. Over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe Home Security to protect their home, and you don't earn the trust of over 4 million without doing something right. Your safety is the only thing that matters at Simply Safe. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. So today, right now, customize the perfect system for your home in only a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege, simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege, and save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month for free. Check it out again at simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege and learn more today, because there's no safe like Simply Safe. And also, our guy Armin Williams at Schooley Mitchell is ready to help free up a little extra wiggle room for your business as you get ready for 2023. Schooley Mitchell is North America's #1 business cost reduction company, and we talk about it all the time, Chris, as you see on the screen if you're watching us on YouTube. On average, business costs reduce 28%. That's just on average. And you even gave us a story last time around. We were talking about Armin, of someone who was like in the 60% range. So you never know what there is to find for your business until you get with Armin Williams at savewitharmin.com.
I think it was actually closer to 80% on a medical company that he saved. Yeah. So again, no cost to you. Just let him kind of dive in to how your business expenses are going and all these different categories, and let him really save you money, because he's trying to help you, and it doesn't cost you anything. He's trying to help Red Raiders out there. But yeah, man, he's good people. Look at that smile on the screen right there if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're not watching us on YouTube, why not? But yeah, he's got a big old smile, man. He's trying to help you and trying to help Red Raiders out. So give him a call.
That is a cost-reducing smile right there from Armin Williams. Again, savewitharmin.com is the website. Telecom services, merchant services, waste, utilities, fuel, anything and everything under the sun that is costing you money, Armin Williams can help you figure out how to become more efficient in what you're paying for. So save money without sacrificing service, and save time without increasing your payroll. If you're paying too much for your business services, again, head over to savewitharmin.com. Get started with an upfront and free analysis. No cost for you to get the ball rolling, and then Armin only shares in any costs that you might find for your business. So think about what you could do with some extra wiggle room today as you get set for a successful 2023, and maybe even a little bit more prosperous than you thought if you get hooked up with Armin Williams at Schooley Mitchell at savewitharmin.com. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. Subscribe if you have not so far. Thanks to those who already have. Tell a friend, tell a foe, tell anyone you know. We're glad to have you out there, maybe even in Morgantown, West Virginia this week. We're out of 9 brothers, 10 or a guinea. That's that Mountaineer math adding up once again. With Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Open week is now in the rear view, Chris, and curious what we can glean from that. Of course, everyone is so interested in the quarterback conversation continuing moving forward. There was some interesting comments about Tyler Shuck and his availability, or lack thereof, I guess, against West Virginia. We'll get to the quarterbacks in just a moment, but I know that there are also some other ways in which the roster could be changing, maybe for the better for Tech this week. Are there some guys a little healthier after the open week?
Yeah, I definitely think, Coach McGuire's comments during the bye week was we should be as healthy as we've been since the start of the season on this coming Saturday. And I think that's, because guys like, we'll get into some guys that are coming back that you haven't even seen yet this year, and we'll get to the Tyler Shuck stuff. But like guys like Adrian Fry, who kind of have been close to coming back, just needed the bye week. You've got guys like Loic Fungi, who's been just dealing with multiple shoulder issues, and I think he's back to close to normal. Again, that's assuming there wasn't any sort of setback or whatever in the bye week, but just generally needed some guys to like just kind of get some time away mentally, if anything. But there's a few guys on offense I think that they're pretty excited about that should be able to break the seal on their season this coming weekend. And that's a wideout, Coy Aiken, who's one of the freshmen who's just – they had high hopes for him coming in the season. I think you hear some people kind of mention he's similar to Dylan Cantrell. And I'll take that comparison every day of the week, man, because Dylan was tough. He made plays. He's just a really, really good football player. But I think Coy can potentially help them on special teams and on offense. And then Cameron Valdez is another one that I think is kind of this change of pace running back. It was interesting in Stillwater because, and Joey talked about this during the bye week, but there was nothing wrong with Taj Brooks. They just kind of rode Sir Roderick Thompson, even though he had kind of come up from the week before in Kansas State. He left that game early and kind of dinged up, but he kind of was your workhorse and had good numbers and all those things against Oklahoma State. But now I think you're going to have three able bodies back there. And I think Cameron Valdez is a bit different from a skill set standpoint because he's a twitchier, faster, more elusive type guy. I don't know if you want him in there trying to pick up the blitz and pass protection, all those kinds of things. However, he's another guy that's a potential playmaker for you, and I think that there's some high expectations with him. So that'll be good for everybody involved and give Zach Kitley a few more options there because you just had 5 receivers that are scholarshiped that competed in that Oklahoma State game. That doesn't count the tight ends,
right?
Just because you had no Sparkman and you had no Miles Price. That's another name that I think should be back this week is Miles Price. He's not going to practice until earlier this week as they've tried to give him a lot of time off and just rest that ankle, but just gives you an idea of kind of some more weapons on the offensive side that I think you desperately need.
Yeah, and that couldn't hurt anything, right? Because offensively against Oklahoma State, I was thinking, how are you working this magic when you've got this situation with your roster, the worst of the year so far, just as far as availability, and yet you're coming off of the week, and I know, again, it's going to be 2 weeks when you get back to it, but you're coming off of the week where the offense, at times at least, looked to be clicking about as well as it had, but yeah, Aiken is a guy that I think we touched on in the week prior to the season beginning as one of those freshmen that was really getting talked about as having a chance to possibly make an impact in year one. So I'm excited to see him on the field. And if Coy Aiken ever gets into the end zone and somebody doesn't have a Ray Stevens drop immediately, Coy, how'd you get that motorcycle up there on the high dive, Coy? Then you're not doing your job up in the booth. So let's just make sure we got that clipped and ready for Coy whenever he scores one big in the return game. Is that where I should be looking, return for that guy, or is it more pass catcher?
That's a great question. I don't I'll be interested to see kind of, one, how much do they want to put on his plate early. This is one of these kids that was one of the most productive high school players in the state of Texas last year at Stephenville. I mean, he did everything, and he was extreme. I mean, if you go look at the amount of catches that he had as a senior, and that's what's special about that is the other team knows where the ball's going, yet they can't really do anything about it. He's just a really good route runner, really good football player, got some size to him, and I think that's why they trusted him so much on special teams. But that's a great question on returner or just special teams in general, but also – as they break the seal on letting him play, how much do you want to load him up? Because he is a true freshman.
Right.
And I think you just have to be careful there managing that. But I think coming into the season, I think potentially it was returner / pass catcher at some level. But as we're 6 weeks in, how much are they comfortable with doing that? And so I think I'm kind of curious to that myself.
Did I get a reaction from you with Ray Stevens?
Yeah, that was good. Bottom line is, I was like, "Welcome back, man."
Wow,
I missed all the stuff. While you
a
were
co-host who picks up when I'm putting down with a pop culture reference. What a novelty in my career! Incredible to see. I'm glad you're a Ray Stevens man, Chris.
Yes.
And good luck to Coy. But the return game maybe is where I'm a little more interested to possibly see him have an impact. But I don't want to limit him. So if you want to be nice there on the offensive side as well and productive, that'd be fine too. But he's one of those names to keep an eye on, no doubt about it, whenever he does get his opportunity. All right, before we get to the available quarterbacks, was that a small surprise that Tyler Shuck is still not getting that full green light, or were we just being a little too quick, or what do you think?
No, I think it's a process. And I'll just tell you right now, I think, and we may find out differently as the week goes along, but I think you're still about a week away from him being fully cleared, able to get. He's not going to get hit in practice or anything, but I think that you're about a week away. That's what I believe at this point, as we're sitting here talking. And so I think that though that they're breaking the seal on him just throwing and starting to practice and starting to do some different things. And I think that you have to get to that point before you get to the point where you're cleared and you can get hit and all those things. He's got a plate and some screws in that collarbone, shoulder area, and all that stuff. I mean, Joey has talked about that. So I don't think they're concerned necessarily, or he will be concerned about getting hit because it's much stronger now than it was. But it's just a matter of all the other things. And he's got to get that throw in motion back and feel comfortable doing all those things. And I'm still very fascinated by how this is all managed, because I mean, the decisions you make now, that's going to play out into the offseason with who plays well, who doesn't play, all that stuff. Trying to keep all these guys kind of engaged and happy and still win football games is going to be really tricky. I mean, I'm telling you, because here's the thing. It's mid-October now. We're going to be talking about these decisions in December again, because guys are going to have decisions to make on whether they want to be back here and all those things when it comes to portal time and decision time and all that stuff. Ugh. And
we didn't even used to have that conversation.
I agree. It's just the reality of it.
It was not even something that existed. And I'm not so sure that I don't miss those days in some ways. And I don't even have to manage it. We're just trying to keep track of it. It's hard enough, but God bless Kitley and McGuire and whoever else has to try to actually manage this. Yeah. Who's going to be the next, Heisman winner at quarterback at Oklahoma? I don't know. Check the Tech quarterback room. Maybe one of those guys in Lubbock.
That's right.
You never know. You never know what way it's going to work out. All right. Available guys. What are we processing? And I know we're just kicking off this week, so there's still a lot to learn here. But what was it like at the quarterback spot in the open week?
I think all three practiced. All three have been practicing. Is that full-fledged go? Is that working them through? Because keep in mind, last time we saw Baron Morton, he was a bit compromised too. So the bye week is as good for him as anybody. But it was a normal, I think, ankle sprain to where he just needs some time off and stay off of it for a bit. Because I think it's been funny, and I think you even said this to me. People have been pleasantly surprised at how well he moves, and that surprised me to hear that so many people were, because this was a five sport all-state athlete in high school. I mean, this kid was a stud at everything. Now, granted, it's at Eastland, it's at the 3A level, but you're a football, you're a basketball, you're baseball, you're track, and then you're a golf guy. He's just an athlete. He's good at whatever he does, and I think that his wheels, but it's also when and how he was able to get out of the pocket and understand pocket presence and his IQ on that internal clock. Okay, it's time. And you could just tell how different he was once he was compromised. But I think the bye week was good for him. But to answer your question, all three have been practicing. I just don't know if you're to the point where Tyler Shuck is cleared yet. If you're asking me to make a guess, I think you're going to have the same quarterback situation going into the game with the same depth chart as you did for Oklahoma State. Barron starts, Donovan backs him up, and then Tyler Shuck will, in fact, be there and on the sideline. Could, in fact, be
Let's
suited
go!
up.
That's what I want to hear, Chris.
That's right. He could, in fact, be available in an emergency situation. But I think you're a week away. I think Baylor, that game is where Tyler Shuck, that now we have a decision to make. Now we can put him out there. We can start him. We can move him up the depth chart as a backup. All kinds of things will be available to you. And Joey keeps saying they want to get out there with all three of them on the field at the same time. There was a multitude of plays and a package that was built with all three of them out there. And that's where it starts to get really fun for the fan to kind of start watching to see how sideways it could get. So I want to see that.
I don't know why we're still talking about a play with three quarterbacks involved. This is just blowing my mind that we're in October and this is still being mentioned.
And there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of plays that they have practiced that they.
This is wild.
Yeah, I mean, and there was a packet. I mean, and one thing plays off of the other. Because I mean, again, it's really confusing to the defense. But you're taking some good players off the field, so those guys can be on the field. But if you're the defense, you're like, okay, I don't know what all's about to happen here.
Let's get some punters involved. The deep snap, why not? Let's just confuse the hell out of them.
Yes.
I'm thinking the same thing. I think most fans will be as well. All right, you only get 11 guys on the field. We're occupying 3 spots for the quarterback. Maybe some of these other guys we might actually want out there. I still don't know if I'm buying that that's ever actually going to be a thing that's used outside of garbage time. And I don't know if it even should, but they keep talking about it. So we'll continue to mention it because it sure is interesting. One more thing we are mentioning before we're wrapping up today's episode, coming up dead ahead. Interesting news during the open week from the Big 12 Conference. Kind of like the parent telling the older brother, you will take your little brother to Sonic. You are going to sit around here and play with these guys for a few more years. And this is the structure in which you're going to do it. Texas and Oklahoma. We'll get to some thoughts on that coming up in just a moment. But first, it's Bet Online again this week. Your headquarters for keeping track of the events you care about. And we'll get to some games a little bit later in the week, Chris, but I've been interested to see over the weekend and heading into this week from our friends at Bet Online, some odds on the next destination for Matt Rhule, because obviously is a pretty interesting situation there where you have a successful college coach, no longer now employed as an NFL head coach. Kind of feel like he could have his pick on the college scene, Chris, or maybe he wants to remain in a professional universe. I don't know. Between those two, pro or college, what's your early take on maybe where we see him land?
He's got $42 million in his back pocket, so he doesn't need to do anything.
There's that option also, like Maui. I don't know.
He can go buy a yacht and just sit on that for the rest of his life if he wants to. I'd be willing to bet that the NFL is so, as I think Matt Rhule has learned, the NFL is like there's so much out of your control on the players, the business aspect, the window of how long you're given and all those things. And like ultimately in that league, and you know, it's just all about the quarterback position. They could never really ultimately get that figured out, which is why he's not employed anymore. But I'd be willing to bet if he coaches again or his next job will be in college now, but it may not be immediately. But I think, Nebraska is the favorite, according to the folks at Bet Online, on where he may end up. And we're certainly not done yet with changes at the college level. True. Either on movement there. But as it stands right now, I think Nebraska is pretty much the odds-on favorite for him to. And I think Nebraska could do a lot worse. Goodness, I mean, if you're Nebraska and you can hire Matt Rhule, I think you feel like you've done extremely well there. And the thing is, though, is that a good job? And everybody's going to say, well, they can pay. They've got that Big Ten money. It doesn't matter to him. He doesn't need that. You know, that's not going to really move his needle as much as because like it would others, because he's sitting on $42 million.
Right. No question about that. I have a lot of respect for Matt Rhule. I thought it was a bizarre hire for Baylor, but at the time where they're trying to clean up that cesspool, I just thought, they got to get anybody they can to say yes. Homeboy comes from, was he a New Jersey guy or like a Pennsylvania?
Yeah, he was.
But where's he from originally?
I think he's up on the East Coast. Yes.
Yeah, either way, like Waco is the spot you're going to land and actually like stake your claim to college football credibility. And I'll be damned if he didn't. So I think anyone, including Nebraska, clearly trash program now. Anyone should be happy to have Matt Rhule be interested in their job, I suppose. I can't believe I would even say that because once upon a time I wouldn't think that, but can't ignore the results. And coming back to college after being a pro head coach, I guess if you're able to do it as well as he is, it might be fine, but good grief, being a college head coach is just something I could never do, Chris. I could never kiss the ring of so many 15-year-olds and their families all across the country. And then you lose your roster. You lose your roster every time. This is true. But some are built for it, and maybe we're finding out Matt Rhule is more so built for that. I think he's college bound again. I mean, you just had so much success. Why would you not want to be back there? But curious to see what maybe challenge he's looking for next. The 42 mil should tide him over, like you said. In the meantime, Bet Online right now is where you need to be to get the jump on all the angles, the action, and the angles on the action for this college football weekend coming up. And as I mentioned, it's headquarters for not only following all the events that you care about, but following your team as well with live betting, stats, and scores, the fastest and easiest way to check in throughout the day. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about what the trends are looking like this week with our friends at Bet Online, where the game starts. You got it. It's Locked On Texas Tech, your team every day on the Locked On Podcast Network. He's Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Red Raiders and Mountaineers coming up this weekend, and plenty more to get to this week. We will hear on tomorrow's show from head coach Joey McGuire as he kicks off the week visiting with members of the media. So check back in with us for sound from Coach McGuire coming up tomorrow right here on Locked On Texas Tech on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Please subscribe. But before we're out of here, wanted to touch on something that was pretty significant while we were away, Chris, that being the Big 12 Conference laying out some plans, some hopes for future scheduling. And as it involves the Longhorns and Sooners, certainly has me feeling, as I mentioned a moment ago, kind of like the Big 12 is more so asking or instructing. That's a question I have. So if you will you kind of lay the groundwork on what we heard and give me your thoughts on the possibility of actually seeing this come to fruition?
Yeah, that part is, there's an unknown there. There just is. Yeah. We don't know. But I think if you're the Big 12, we've been waiting to figure out what they're going to do scheduling-wise. You don't know what your schedule is next year. You don't know who you're playing, who you're not playing. You don't know divisions, pods, all these different things. We just didn't know. And so this offers up some clarity. And again, the Big 12 has no choice but to try to plan and act like that it's going to be a 14-team league for the next 2 years after this one concludes. And so, but I'm curious to see, you're right, if this is what actually happens, because Oklahoma and Texas kind of decided. Now, so what they've decided is, and there's so many people out there that are against divisions in general. They're anti-divisions because it's like we saw the Big 12 North and South, and it was so lopsided. There were some years where if you were like fourth in the Big 12 South, you were essentially fourth in the Big 12. But right. You're blocked from being able to get to where you want to go and all these different things. And so I think they're trying to do the right thing by playing no divisions is what they've decided. However, and they've said you're going to play every team once over that 2-year span. So you're going to get a game versus Central Florida and BYU and Houston and Cincinnati and then all the other schools. But there's going to be some years, depending on where you're going to miss some of these schools too. And they've indicated publicly that we're going to try to keep the rivalries included. Well, Texas Tech wasn't really included on this list because I don't even know who you would consider. In other words, Oklahoma State, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas State. They're going to put West Virginia and Cincinnati. They're going to make sure those are played, I guess, every year. I just don't know what that does for Texas Tech. I'm guessing it has to do with probably because I think even Baylor and TCU were mentioned as like, okay, they're going to make sure that they play. But I'm guessing you're involved in those conversations where you're going to for sure play the TCU, the Baylor, the Oklahoma State group, I guess, every year. But I don't know what that does for Oklahoma and Texas. Is there going to be a year in the next two where you miss one of those two schools? Here's what also I think is fascinating. If you feel like you're going to get 1 year for sure between Texas and Oklahoma, I really am curious if you reward the OGs of the Big 12 Conference with some home games again versus Texas and Oklahoma, meaning like Texas Tech, they could host the Sooners or the Longhorns in back-to-back years. Because if they are out, it's more than likely they would be out that last year of the league. And at that point, they're losing their own home game, if that makes sense. You're not costing one of your – so there's still a lot to be decided, but I think that you're starting to kind of narrow in on what this is going to look like. But I don't know who Texas Tech is playing next year. We don't know, and it's just going to maintain at 9 conference games. You're not adding or you're not taking away. So there's going to be multiple teams here and programs that you're not going to see next year. Some of those are going to be programs that you have been playing for every year, whether it's the Iowa State or the West Virginia or an Oklahoma or a Texas or whatever. There's going to be some of those that are not on your list next year. And I'm fascinated. Do you have to go to Orlando or to Provo or to Cincinnati or whatever? What do those road opportunities look like? So we're getting closer, and they have said that I guess it's late November. It's really the worst possible time to drop this news because there's so much going on anyways. But they're going to drop that in your lap, and you're going to get the schedule in mid to late November. And you're going to find out, we're all going to find out together, like what that indeed looks like and who you don't have to play. Because somebody's going to feel like they get screwed, right? That's just the way it's going to go.
Yeah. How about let's make it the guys that screwed you? You had that idea.
and I think that you're right. Those schools are going to have to play some of these new, I'll be shocked if there's not Texas having to play one of these new schools, which isn't, in a way, it's not necessarily fair that it goes that way. They should make those two schools go to all the OGs of the Big 12 conference, man. Reward them with a big crowd and having to deal with all that. But again, what do they come up with? I don't know, but we're getting closer to finding out. But no divisions is what is the report, and that's the way it seems is going to go.
I'm glad to have no divisions. I'm not a fan of divisions either, and I think maybe a lot of fans of teams in the former Big 12 South would just kind of feel that way because of that experience. But certainly Texas Tech would be among them. Not the Aggies, obviously, because you weren't relevant even in the Big 12 South. So that's going to be a foreign thought to you, I suppose. But the rest of you, you remember what it was like. And that includes you, Baylor. I understand you were doing some things in a poor way at that time, but I'm still thinking about you, and I'll prop you up above the Aggies if I want to, which I do right now, so I am. The Big 12 South was a nightmare. The Big 12 North was a dreamscape for anyone that wants to skate on to robbing the BCS of many millions of dollars. Shout out to the round mound of turnaround, Mark Mangino. I don't think, though, Chris, that there's any notion. I mean, I know what I want, but what do I think is going to happen? That the Big 12 is going to give the middle finger to Texas and Oklahoma. For some reason, I just still don't see that happening to the extent that I think it could or should. I'm not telling you it's got to be 9 away games. I'm not telling you they need to camp out in Orlando and play Central Florida for a month straight. But those are ideas maybe you should consider, but I'm not telling you they need to. But Chris, I gotta ask you, as a fan, what do you even want? Because I got to tell you, I don't want any of it, to be honest with you. I mean, if Texas and Oklahoma are coming here, fine. But I'd rather them just get on down the road and kiss my ass every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Well, and I tell you, Casey, what ultimately is going to – it's not about trying to – like you're talking about where the league will come from or come at it from. It's really about what this whole thing is about. It's about dollars and cents. And so if the TV folks – say these are the games we want, or these are the games that are most valuable, i.e. these are the games we can put the most money back in your pocket, the league members. Right. That's what they're going to do. I mean, the end. And so because you'd be crazy to, for example, really try to get sideways and go, hey, Texas and Oklahoma, we're not going to let you play each other anymore. That's the game you're going to miss. Well, that wouldn't make sense financially at all, because that game is extremely valuable to the TV package and the partners and all that. That's who's paying the bills here. I don't know what I want. I'll be honest. I don't know who I want you to miss. I would say, though, this is my preference. I want Oklahoma and Texas having to come here again. That's what I would wish for. I really do, just because those are – you don't know how many more times those are ever going to happen. And if you can squeeze some more, home – opportunities out of from those programs, I'd love it, because at some point that will go away, and it could be years from now before it happens again. Maybe it's an every year deal with Texas. If the folks in Austin, the politicians in Austin anyway, get leveraged a bit. But that's if you're asking me what I want, that's what I would prefer. If you're having to play those schools, I would hope it's in Lubbock again next year.
True, very true. Yeah, and I would also like a heads up from Norman, Oklahoma. If you're going to continue to stink, then just come on back as often as you want. I'd love to have you on the schedule. I never had any use for Oklahoma because I don't give a damn about the Big 8. I don't care about Barry Switzer and his gold Trans Ams or Sooner football in general. I mean, it's fun to beat a well-financed program and one that's cheated as well as anyone has in the history of college football, which is an achievement. Obviously, you still get trophies for doing it. But I just never had that heat or any care whatsoever about Norman, Oklahoma.
Yeah, and that's fair. Texas,
like I do Texas.
Yeah,
that's the in-state program. I mean, it's still the same way, honestly, to me with Oklahoma State. I know we got to drum this up, and we're going to get that bronze tumbleweed next time around. You better believe. 364 days thinking about the next Dust Bowl. Yeah, I'm trying to drum it up, but it's all about that in-state stuff for me. So yeah, I guess if you are going to be on the schedule, make them come to Lubbock for whatever that's worth. And like you said at the very beginning of this, maybe those on the other side that kind of determine that. So we'll see if it's just some wasted conversation or if maybe we can.
And
which,
in Casey, there's another school of thought. If you feel like I don't think most would feel this way, but some may. They go, you know what? Let me get a year without either one of them on the schedule. Maybe it makes it a bit easier. I don't know. You know, there may be some of that thought too. Let everybody else have to go deal with them.
Well, you mentioned missing Iowa State. I'm like, all right, not a bad idea there, especially if it's a trip to Ames.
Although this year, yeah, you're gonna deal with Iowa State at the end of the season, and it could be 5 degrees up there. It could be miserable up there. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to that trip at all.
So maybe that's not a bad idea.
Yes.
We'll write that one down.
Yeah.
Write this down. We're back at it tomorrow on Locked On Texas Tech with sound from head coach Joey McGuire as we really begin to set our sights in earnest on the Mountaineers of West Virginia, the Deutschendorf Cup. It's the battle for John Denver's soul. Make Locked On Big 12 your second listen today after Locked On Texas Tech with Josh Neighbors right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And yeah, get back at it with us tomorrow right here on Locked On Texas Tech. Chris, enjoyed it as always. Thanks for the time, man.
Absolutely. Glad to be back, and congratulations to the Cowans.
Thank you again. And
keep hope alive, people.
Thank you. I was about to say, please drop it on me now because got that wedding out of the way, and now it's just that whole life thing I got to figure out. It's all
there
downhill,
you go.
Right? What do they say? The first 50 years are the hardest. So looking forward to that benchmark. All right, we'll see you tomorrow on Locked On Texas Tech. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Have a great one. Thanks for joining us again on the Locked On Podcast Network on Locked On Texas Tech.